Hey, what is going on everyone, and welcome to my second video on base stats for patch 5.10, where we'll be featuring the Dark Hunters. Also, if you want to go back and check my previous videos from yesterday where I discussed the changes to the Young Avengers, if this is a team that interests you, then go and do that. Now we'll be going all over the rework stats to the older characters alongside how Morbius and Dr. Voodoo stack up to the existing roster, and the results are quite interesting. So if there are any people out there with big red stars on the older members of the team, then who knows, this patch might be for you. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Alright, and so here we are in the Dark Hunter stats increase table. Now, for those of you who did watch my Young Avengers video from the other day, or who maybe have seen me do something like, I did a very similar video for the Web Warriors when they came out at the beginning of patch 5.9. So the way this is going to work is that we've kind of adjusted all of the character stats to level 85, 7 yellow, 5 red, Blue ISO 2. Now this is not Striker because Striker impacts the damage stat, so I decided to go with the non-Striker for the purposes of stat checking. Gear tier 15 and Stark Tech 25%. Now the reason why I chose these values is because for older characters, like the ones that are being reworked, it's very easy, I would say, to get to 7 yellow, and 5 red is a really good position to be in if it's a character or a team that you're going to want to work on. So those are the kind of the stats that I'm sharing in this video. Now, in terms of the way that the stat reworks go, now that's why I have the old stats here and then the new ones here as well. So this is with the base stat adjustments per character, and the way that red stars, ISOs, and abilities all interact is that builds off of the base stats. We add that all together, and then I have a total here, but also what I call a character equivalent column for those who didn't watch my other videos. And this just kind of gives you a good idea of what these new reworked character stats are like compared to newer characters that are out now, to give you an idea of what it really means. I also have a rating here on the side, so if it's in dark green, this is really good, so that's a good thing. Anything in the green is pretty good. And then next to it, I just have like just generally where they fall in terms of the specific ranking. So for Ghost Rider specifically, he got a 15% health increase, 26 damage, 57 armor, 33 focus, and 36 resistance. So you can see all of the stuff here. I'm not going to go through every single column here. I will say that he does have a 40% max health passive, which is why his health is very large. And also he does have a mystic mystic ability as well on his passive, giving an extra 40% there too. So that's why those stats are very large. I bolded this one in particular for its focus. So his health, it falls within the top 10 of all characters, most recently equivalent to a character like Deathpool. This is very, very good. His damage is also in the top 10, equivalent to Dr. Doom. His armor is above average. It's not the best, but it's about a top 50 character. I mean, he's a brawler, so you don't really expect him to be that huge, but he did get a pretty significant increase on his armor stat there. Now his focus, equivalent to Dormammu. So he has a top 5 focus in the game, but yes, you know, a lot of this does stem from that passive that he has. And, you know, as we look at other characters' focuses down below, you know, keep in mind that there is going to be this team focus as well, so that's going to help bump them up. Now, resistance-wise, yeah, I chose Scientist Supreme. It's literally the closest thing I could come. It's weird, because Scientist Supreme actually has a really high resistance stats for whatever reason. Anyways, that puts Ghost Rider in a top 25 resistance stat. Overall, you know, his stat ratings are very good. Top 10 in health and damage, top 5 in focus, top 25 in resistance, and, you know, pretty decent on the armor side. All in all, Ghost Rider saw a significant increase on his stats, which is really, really great. So yeah, kudos to Ghost Rider. If there's anyone out there that has like a 6 or 7 red Ghost Rider, this might be for you, because that's he's pretty stat beefy, you know, compared to some of the other ones below. So let's talk about Elsa Bloodstone. She was the blaster of the team. She saw significant increases to her damage. We're not going to be going over the kits here in this video. You know, go watch my other video where I talk about the changes to the team in general. But Elsa saw a lot of increases to the percentage numbers on her abilities, which is really, really good. She saw a 32% increase in her health, 29 damage, 50 focus, 50 armor, 4 in focus, and 29% in resistance. Don't be too bothered about the focus, because that's not really important, because she doesn't really have any debuffs, so that doesn't really matter. So in terms of the other stats, though, her hit points overall is basically equivalent to Lady Deathstrike. That puts her in a bit of a top 50. She's a blaster, so, you know, don't expect too much on the hit point side of things. But all in all, that's actually not too bad equivalent-wise, you know, in terms of her being a damage-focused character. Her damage, though, is in the top 15 now, and that puts her alongside an equivalent of Icarus. Now, obviously, Icarus is a better character overall, with the kits to back that up, but it kind of gives you a good idea in terms of how hard she's going to be hitting now, not only on her just general skills, but like her passive that follows up as well. Pretty cool. Her armor, top 75. It's not great. It's just a little bit above average, equivalent to Iceman. Her focus, again, not important, but, you know, top 50. Her resistance is in the top 30 as well. So yeah, the focus doesn't matter, but hey, Ghost Rider will bump that up even further. So overall, Elsa saw a pretty significant bump where she needs it the most, which is in the damage category. Now puts her in the top 15 of all of the characters in Marvel Strike Force. That's good. Alright, and so with Mordo, he saw a pretty significant increase as well to his base stats. You can see here on the left-hand side, 49% for health, 38% for damage, 50% for armor, 46% for focus, and 55% for resistance. Now, if you know Mordo's kit, really, he doesn't have a lot of damage in it anyways. He's primarily there to land his debuffs and making sure he lands. So he saw a pretty decent rework there with his stats. His health-wise is actually pretty good, equivalent to Lady Deathstrike here. Very similar, if you notice, to the stats for Elsa Bloodstone. Just a little bit better than hers, actually. And this lands him in the top 50 for health, which is actually pretty decent. Damage-wise, again, not really that important, because the only thing that he does for damage is, like, his ultimate, and, like, I guess his basic, but you're probably not going to really rely on that. Anyways, it's also a top 50, equivalent to someone like Thor. Now, his armor, despite the 50% armor increase, it was pretty low to begin with, so this kind of puts him pretty average. It's just a little bit above average, equivalent to a Thor. Not that important there, but what's good about his focus is that it does land him in a top 20 focus stat, which is really good, equivalent to one of the newer characters, Spider-Punk. And then if you add that on top of the the focus that you're getting from Ghost Rider's passive, then that's probably going to push him well into like a top 5, I would imagine, in terms of his focus, and along, obviously you're going to run them together, so that's going to give an incredible focus bump there for Mordo. Now, resistance wise, again, just a little bit above average, top 75 like Taskmaster, you know, but Mordo isn't there to really take hits. That's not what he's designed for. But on the plus side, his hit points is actually pretty respectable now, and so he's not going to drop as quickly as before. If you add on the 40% health passive from Ghost Rider, then yeah, that's actually going to look pretty good. So all in all, that's not too bad there. Let's talk about two of the newer characters though. So Morbius. Now, we have Morbius and Dr. Voodoo. This is with what we saw in the, we were given some sort of roster shots that showed displayed stats. This was Gear 16, level 85, 7 yellow, 4 red, Striker green 5. Basically, how I managed to calculate this with character equivalents without having MSF.gg is just inputting these values into MSF.gg, arranging it from top to bottom, looking at the displayed stats, and then just basically looking how it would stack up with the other characters. So that's how that's done, in case you didn't make that clear on my Young Avengers video when we looked at Echo and Kate Bishop, but that's how I did it for this as well. So Morbius actually has some really, really good stats. So if you look, a lot of this is in the green. They're all in the green. A lot of this is in the dark green, which is really, really good. So his health stat is equivalent to a character like Silver Surfer, which is in the top 25 of all characters in the game. Very, very good. His damage, also, just like Elsa Bloodstone, is equivalent to Icarus. So this is a very strong stat. Top 15 in the game in this case for Morbius. His armor stat also very respectable, top 30, equivalent to Magneto. That was the closest thing I could find. My apologies. It's still pretty good though. Focus wise, like Kestrel, which is a top 25 stat, and once again, he also has focus in his kits on his skills, so this is going to be quite easy for him to land, on top of having the 40% focus that we're getting from Ghost Rider as well, like I mentioned for Mordo. So it should be really easy for Morbius to land his abilities where he needs to. Now, resistance, Scientist Supreme, this is the second time I've had to use her as a reference, but also very good, top 25 in the game for the resistance stat for Morbius. Now, his speed, 128. This is, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I can do that now, is the 6th fastest in the game at 128. That's incredible. Morbius, 128, 6th fastest in the game. That is very, very good. On top of that, he does get additional 30% damage for himself and for Dark Hunter allies, but this is only in war offense, so do keep that in mind. That's why when it came to the other characters, I didn't really mention that, as you know, we're gonna have to wait until we get Morbius as well. But that 30% extra damage, think of how that's going to impact for characters like Elsa Bloodstone, who already has a top 15, you know, very similar damage stat to Morbius. It's going to be pretty incredible, I think. Now, Dr. Voodoo, let's talk about him a little bit. Again, the same stats as Morbius in terms of the what's shown in the game there. But as far as how it stacks up, his health is a top 20 stat in the game. His character equivalent is Icarus in this case, and we talked a little bit in the previous video about Dark Hunters, but also how Dr. Voodoo and Ghost Rider, sorry, I was gonna say Ghost Hunter. Dr. Voodoo and Ghost Rider have the highest hit point stat of the team. But if you're building Dr. Voodoo more than Ghost Rider, there is a possibility that his health might become higher than Ghost Rider, and in some instances that might impact the battle, possibly not too much. I know that Heroes for Hire has a targeting highest health mechanic. Certain other teams, I thought, certain other characters might have that as well, so that's just something to watch out for when you're building this team. If you're building this team, you know, to make sure that the health differential, things like that. This pop happened up a little bit for Heroes for Hire, or sorry, not Heroes for Hire, Weapon X between Sabretooth and Omega Red, so I just wanted to raise that really quickly here as well. In terms of his damage stat, he's not really there for his damage. Actually, in fact, he doesn't really have anything other than his basic that does damage. His special is a debuff related skill, and his ultimate is flat damage drain, so this really doesn't matter, but it's a top 60 damage for what it's worth. His armor is actually very respectable for a support character, equivalent to Silver Surfer and a top 20 in the game, so that's very impressive here. His focus, not as high as Mordo, so it's equivalent to Taskmaster. You know, this is still above average. It's a top 50 in the game. I think when you equate Ghost Rider's passive, this should make up for that downfall or that shortcoming. That's mainly for his special, landing the ability block on his special, which also applies defense downs, things like that. I think as long as you have Ghost Rider's passive T-Fort, then you should be okay with that, but it's not going to be as high of a focus stat as Mordo. Resistance, Scientist Supreme again, she shows up once again. Again, a very good top 25 resistance stat here alongside Morbius and one of the other characters above who I mentioned, I think, as well. Forgot who that was. Ghost Rider. So all three of them actually have really amazing resistance stats here, and Dr. Voodoo's speed comes in at a respectful 120. This is a top 30 in the game. There's actually a lot of people who share this stat, but this number, but the character equivalent in this case that I'm choosing is Cap Sam, who also has a speed of 120. So what do I think about this team overall? They have some really good stat changes, and even for the newer characters, if you see Morbius, very, very good, you know, across the board. You know, he lands in a very respectful position as a new character. Dr. Voodoo also respectfully, you know, in health, armor, some pretty good defensive beefy stats. That was mentioned by the devs in the meeting that we had as well, and so I'm expecting some decent things out of Dr. Voodoo, possibly as a standalone character for this team, even if you're not using them for war. Morbius, unfortunately, is kind of more relegated to war and in this team. But if you're one to go into this team and, you know, you have some good red stars on the previous characters, then Morbius is no slouch at all. You know, has some really good stats across the board. So I'm really happy about that as well. I do really like what they did with the art and the animation for Morbius and Dr. Voodoo. I'm just a little bit disappointed that Morbius' kit is still reliant a little bit more on not only the team, but also war offense. So that's a bit disappointing. Overall, though, the other characters, Elsa saw a significant improvement here in the damage. You can see in the top 15 as well. And Ghost Rider. Definitely, I think the king of this patch. I think the king of the base stat reworks here is Ghost Rider. I think he's definitely in a really great position. Top 10, top 50 armor, top 5 in focus, and top 25 in resistance. So very good stats for Ghost Rider. Now, in terms of this team overall, we know that it's meant to be dominating Heroes for Hire, kind of semi-dominating almost any you know, city heroes that they come across, as long as you have Morbius on the team. And I'm really interested to see what else this team is able to do. I know that they're going to be able to beat some Eternals hybrids, depending on what kind of speed meta is involved there. But I am quite interested. Obviously, we only have the kind of the gameplay footage that we were shown. You know, if you checked out my other video from yesterday, but hopefully with the test servers coming up, maybe it won't be too long until we get that we'll be able to test this team more widely against other war defenses. But at this time, I think they're mainly marketed towards a Hero City, Heroes for Hire counter. However, I was told that they were very good as a general war offense, that they should be able to beat most defenses aside from Infinity Watch as a full, and I think possibly Weapon X. But aside from that, and maybe Young Avengers. But I have my suspicions because, you know, they are very strong against hero cities. City heroes, rather. And Morbius being able to take out Miss Marvel and Squirrel Girl, maybe we're gonna have to test this out. All of this is gonna really need to be tested because you want to take everything here with a grain of salt. Just because the devs say something doesn't necessarily make it true. I got really burned from Skilletary way back in the day when I went all in on a war offense team. Skilletary was the last war offense team that I went all in. So yeah, I mean, what am I going to be doing personally with this team? I'm actually going to be going more into Young Avengers, believe it or not. But I think if you've been a follower of my channel for a little while, then you know that I really, really love my Squirrel Girl. So unfortunately, I'm not sure what kind of love my Dark Hunters are going to get from this patch this time around. But if any of you are sitting on a 6 or 7 red Ghost Rider or Elsa, this might be the time for you to shine. And who knows, maybe there might be a good, impressive release method for Morbius and Dr. Voodoo. One of them might be a campaign event character. We saw a special trait in the name of Spirit Slayer, so that maybe puts Dr. Voodoo possibly as character number 3 for the patch as a campaign event character. And if Morbius isn't too ungenerous, I don't know what I meant to say there. If he is generous, then maybe I might actually decide to do more with this team. But of course, really comes down to the testing, comes down to what can we actually do in practice, and we'll have more of that in the days to come. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was helpful to help you guys decide whether or not you're going to go in for this team or not. And, you know, like I said, more testing to come, and the patch will be on its way soon. So thanks for watching, everyone. And of course, until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see y'all later. Boilon signing out.